Thank you for being here tonight. I will give a short introduction about IEEE and the PS chapter, and then we will dive immediately into the event because that's why you're all here. So my name is Helene. I'm the vice chair of this organization. Then you have Giacomo, the chair. He's currently not here because he is in the US and minus 31 degrees, super cold. Then we have Numer, Fran, and Carlos. They're also part of the core team. And then we have a bunch of volunteers who are helping us with organizing the events. So what is our vision? What do? We try to create a community for students and young professionals who are interested in energy-related topics and want to approach opportunities and key challenges. This we do with several activities, such as industry workshops. So then we invite companies to give a workshop of what they're doing in their company. We also have technical workshops. These workshops are mostly given by PhD students from Electa, but also from ESAT or from other universities as well. Then we have guest lectures. In the guest lectures, we invite professors from other universities to give a topic on their specific field. And then we have our symposia. This is our main event. It's about how can we reach the net zero goals, what about offshore wind, and this year we will have it on the 2nd of April about PV, what are the challenges with solar PV and what are the opportunities there. And then next to lectures, we also have company visits. So a few years ago, we went to Troisbon. It's a hydropower plant, and maybe we will go this year again or next year. So keep an eye on our socials if you want to join. And then last year we went to the Port of Antwerp and to Equans, a substation. Then we also have some fun, some social events where we go bowling, or we have some certificates, some awards that we won for all our work that we did. And then our non-technical events, such as well-being, how it is as a PhD student, how can you improve your well-being, and also how can you improve your financials. And there was an event by Thomas Günther, he was a speaker there. So that's it. If you want to know more about our organization, check our LinkedIn. We also have a YouTube channel, so this talk, if the speakers agree, will be on our YouTube channel, and all the talks that you saw the posters of are on our YouTube channel as well, so check them out if you want to see it. And then we will start the event. So first we will have an introduction and talk of LRD, and then we have a panel discussion of 3 speakers who have a background in academia and are now a founder themselves, together with Steve Steven. He will be the moderator and he will give an introduction what he is doing later on. So thank you.
Hello? Okay, that's better. There we are. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Happy to see so many enthusiastic people who want to learn more about spin-off creation. So always very happy to be in front of such an audience. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Kurt de Smet. I'm an investment manager at LRD, working within the spin-off team. And actually, if I just talk about my personal experience, so I'm just like many of you, an engineer from education, mechanical engineer, so just graduated across the street. But after my studies, I went immediately into industry, spent 20 years there. First 15 years working for a multinational, of which the first 10 years was really into engineering, where I developed products that would go into the market in 2 years' time. After that, I spent 5 years as marketing manager, being responsible for international sales of products. By then it were already medical devices, so I was in touch with a lot of hospitals. And then after 15 years, I decided to take another road, and I started working in hospital myself, where I was responsible for infrastructure, but also for maintenance of all the medical devices. So going from a simple blood pressure sensor to a CT scanner or an MRI scanner. Since 2 years back at university to share my experience with all of you. So a very warm welcome to all of you. So let us have a brief look at the agenda for today. So I have 3 topics for you. So first of all, there's an introduction of LRD. LRD is the tech transfer office of this university. Then we will talk more about key ingredients to set up a successful spin-off company. And then finally, we will talk about the creation process of a spin-off itself. So I will speak for about 20 minutes. So we'll see indeed afterwards there's still room for questions. So let's get started. So yeah, we're all at university here. There are 3 key activities from the university. First one is, of course, providing education. Second one is making sure there's research. And then there's also the third option, and that is making sure that we have a service going back to society. Because after all, we are spending public money, and society would like to see some of that returning back to society. So doing that, we need to transfer know-how and technology to our society, and we do that through a specific organization. That's the TTO, that's the Tech Transfer Office. So for KU Leuven, that's KU Leuven R&D, in short, LRD. So this is the mission and vision of our department. Now, I don't want things to get too boring, so I'll immediately jump to the essentials. So what do? We support valorization of all the research that you are doing. And we make sure that there's a return going to society that can be both economical, societal, or an environmental impact. So who has already visited LRD head offices? Okay, a few people who already found the way towards LRD. For those who did not, I included this picture, so at least you know where our home is. And of course, you're always welcome to pass by. If you want more information about your spin-off plans, if you want to have a chat about it, just come by. We're in the city center, we're close to the old market, so it's also fine to have a conversation over a beer or a coffee. It does not always need to be in the office. So how are we organized within LRD? Actually, we have 5 departments, and that, to me, is already one of our first key success factors as a TTO. So actually, by having 5 departments, we can assure that we have experts in all different fields that are required to make sure that you have a successful spin-off. So that goes from the legal department, who will help you in case you need to set up agreements with parties. We have our Flemish and federal funding team together with our EU team, who will help you in funding or raising funds to make sure that you can reach your, or let's say improve your technology towards an investable level. And then of course you also have the IP unit who will help you if you want to create a patent or in case you need an NDA if you want to talk to people. And then last but not least, there's the spin-off team, of which I'm a part of that. So the other success factor of our organization is at the bottom. That's the financial setup. So at KU Leuven, we do make sure that if there is a return from valorization, that the majority of that money goes back to the labs. So the majority goes back, and that of course creates an incentive for the labs to make sure that they really work on valorization. With the money, they can invest this in extra people, invest in extra equipment, in infrastructure, or they can also invest the money into a spin-off. There are 3 ways how you can valorize. First one is contract research. So that means that indeed you're going to work for somebody else who pays you to investigate something. The second way is licensing. In that way, actually somebody is paying you to be able to use your IP. And the third one is setting up a specific vehicle, a spin-off, a new company where you will use the IP to create value. Now, maybe a quick question to the audience. which do you think of these three options will make you the rich, let's say, in the easiest way? Nobody wants to take a guess? Well, indeed, indeed. I think if you would want to make sure that you get easily rich, I would go for licensing, because then you can just start lying on the beach and somebody else will be working with your IP to make sure that they commercialize it. If you choose the spin-off option, there's, let's say, hard work in front of you for many years. So just be aware about that. But it can be very rewarding, it can be very fun, and can be very inspiring. Here you can see the evolution of all our spin-offs that we have created. So as you can see over time, we've created many spin-offs. So the blue curve actually indicates all the spin-offs that we have created. So up till now, we've created over 180 spin-offs. And then you have the green curve, which are all the spin-offs who are currently still active. So active being either working still on themselves or where their activities have been merged in a bigger company. But as you can see, there's not a big gap, so our failure rate is quite limited. Now, one very important key to success, in our opinion, is of course that we will try to participate as a university in as many of the spin-offs as we can. We will try to take a board seat and we will try to help you grow. But in that, there's also a big advantage for us as a TTO, because we do see all the hurdles that all our spin-offs are experiencing. And for us, this is tons of experience. It gives us a lot of lessons learned that we can take back in our incubation process and make sure that we improve our next spin-off. So here you can see an overview of all the different spin-off companies that we created. So we create spin-off companies in very different fields, going from life sciences, over medtech, over data mining and AI. And I think if I'm standing in front of ESAT, I think most of you will look into ICT or chip design. So I guess most of you will recognize some of the spin-offs that are over there. So for example, there's VersaSense, who is really into IoT-based monitoring systems. There's Magix, who is really looking into radiation-hardened chip design. There's Illimity, who is into cybersecurity. And then you also have Tusk IC, who are in radio frequency and millimeter wave chip design. Now I do have to apologize myself, because I think from the panel there are indeed also people who have a spin-off from our university, which unfortunately their logo might be missing. So in my next presentation, I'll make that up. So that brings us to our second point for topic for this evening. And those are the key ingredients for a successful spin-off. So maybe a question to the audience. What do you believe is a success factor for a startup? So what would be a good recipe? What should be put into the recipe to make sure that we have a successful spin-off? Okay, indeed, yeah, the team, yes, very good, absolutely, that's very important. Money, yes, indeed, you need money as well, absolutely, it needs to be investable. Absolutely, yeah, the product market fit is very important, just making sure indeed that you have a product where there is a market for. And certainly in a university context, that's a very important issue. Most often we are really working on technology, and what we then often see is that actually we have a technology push instead of a technology pull. And then we of course have to start looking for the right market fit for the technology that you have been developing. One more. A purpose and a mission, yes, definitely, indeed, to make sure that you keep your goals aligned, absolutely, yeah. So I think there are a lot of things that are important, and all of the answers that you have given are not wrong. I think there are all these different aspects who are important to make a successful spin-off. Now, what I would like to talk about this evening is the 6 key ingredients that we believe as a tech transfer office are very important, just to make sure that you keep seeing the trees in the woods. So first of all, and it was already mentioned by one of you, it's a team. I don't know if anybody recognizes this team. Indeed, indeed. I already hear somebody saying Bill Gates is on the picture. Good watching, indeed. So, indeed, I should have invested in this team, although it looks like a bunch of hippies. But indeed, at the left-hand side, you can see Bill Gates as a very, very young guy. So indeed, I think when you talk about a team, there are a few things that are important. First of all, the team, it needs to be a complementary and balanced team. If you would look at a spin-off, you need a balance of skills, and certainly in a spin-off, there are two very important skills that you require. First of all, you need somebody who has technical skills, who can work on your technical roadmap to make sure that you can bring a product, develop a product that can go to the market. Second, you will need also somebody who has skills to look into business development, because that's the other very important thing. Not having a product itself will not sell. So you need to have somebody there who wants to really go into market validation, who wants to be in front of the customer, and who wants to make sure that you get all the market intelligence. So very important indeed that you have those two skills in your team. A second point is setting up a spin-off company, and I think one of the panel members will later on also recognize that. You need to be aware that creating a spin-off, it's not about a sprint. It's about a marathon, and it costs you many, many years to get there. So it's very important to really be honest and look at your own and yourself and ask yourself the question, where do I get my energy from? What do I get passionate about? And if it's about technology, then absolutely, I mean, you can go into a spin-off and maybe take the CTO role. Or if you're more into really general management and you really want to be in front of the customer, do all the stakeholder interaction, then maybe the role of a CEO is fit for you. But by all means, have a look at what really drives you and gives you energy, because it's not just a sprint, it's a very long marathon. So the second item is, of course, technology. And yes, of course, technology needs to be based on excellent science, because indeed you want to differentiate yourself from the state of the art. That's, of course, speaks for itself. But the second is also very important, and it was already being mentioned by one of you as well. You need to respond to a real world problem. And there you have to watch out, because it needs to be a need to have problem and just not a nice to have problem. You can compare it actually to a mosquito bite versus a shark bite. If you have a mosquito bite, yeah, okay, it's annoying, yes, indeed. But if you just wait for a few hours, the itching will get over and the problem will be gone. But if you have a shark bite, I mean, you've lost your arm, you're bleeding to death, well, in those cases, the market is really looking for a solution, and that's where you want to be. And certainly when it comes down to research, where I was already referring to the market push versus market pull, this is very important to assess for yourself. A third point here is the USP. It's your unique selling proposition. It's making sure that you identify the features who will bring really value to your customers and which will set you out from competition. And then last but not least, you need to make sure indeed that your technology is sufficiently developed. So I don't know if you're familiar with the TRL level, it's a technology readiness level. You need to make sure that your technology is advanced enough to attract investors. For example, if you are at the TRL level of 3, I've been supporting a team for more than 2 years now, and they're just not able to find investors. I mean, it's just not investable. You need to make sure that you can take your technology to the next level and make sure that you get more funding to bring your technology to a more investable level. So you need to make sure you get to a level like TRL 7, something like that, so you can really start with sales of your product as soon as possible. If you're not there yet, then of course the university is also there for you. That's why I've put there at the last point, it's a funding need. There are indeed ways how you can ensure that you get funding to further develop your technology after you finish your PhD. For example, we're working on a team that's looking into robotic inspection of sewers. So they, for example, have already had C3 funding, which gives them a 3-year money to really start working on their technology. And even after that, they now have applied for a Vlaio Innovation Mandate spin-off, which gives them another 2 years of funding where they can still continue working on development of technology, but also already look into the business plan itself. So just be aware indeed that you need a lot of time sometimes and a lot of funding to get to an investable level. Third point for tonight, it's making sure you have a validated market. Now, when you're talking about the market, the first point will, of course, be to make sure that, the size of the market is large enough. I mean, it needs to be large enough to make sure that you can have a viable company that can live from the revenue that's generated. Secondly, you will have to look into your competition and make an assessment of how your competition is behaving. I think a very good book to refer to would be a Blue Ocean Strategy. You have Blue Ocean and you have Red Ocean. If you're in the Red Ocean, then there's a lot of competition. Everybody's fighting for the same kind of customer. While if you can go to a Blue Ocean, and then you're in a market segment where you are creating the market, you're not having a lot of competition, and that's where you want to be. Third point is, of course, to also look at your customers. Have you been asking them how they feel about your product? Is there enough value in the product that you offer? Is there a willingness to pay? And have you assessed that they want to pay the price that you have in mind? So having already a first customer is also a very good thing to do. And you can already do that within university if you want to. So there's, for example, a team that currently is working on the identification of microplastics in water. Well, last year they already had their first customer, they already had their first paying customer who paid for their service, and actually they've learned a lot from just the interaction with them. So having the possibility to do that, and you can also do that bootstrapped at university to a certain level. So the main message here is make sure you get out there, interact with the market, interact with your customers, with your partners, even though with your competitors. The fourth point is about IP, and there actually you have two very important aspects. The first one is about the freedom to operate, which means, do you have the rights to use your IP? Do you have indeed a free road to go where you want to go? And if you talk about the freedom to operate, then there are two aspects very important. First of all, there's the external freedom to operate, which means that if you are applying your technology, are you not infringing anybody else's IP or patents? And the second part is about internal freedom to operate. That's where you will check whether you have all the rights for your own IP. Because, for example, you have been collaborating in a European project. Well, it could be that you've already given some access rights to one of your partners in the consortium. So then it's very important to check the consortium agreement and to see which rights you've already given to one of your partners. We at the Tech Transfer Office, we always prefer to fully assign the IP to the spin-off company, which means that we will fully transfer the IP and the full ownership to the spin-off company. But sometimes, because of past agreements, we are obliged to only give an exclusive license where we need to carve out some of the rights to make sure that KU Leuven can still comply with past agreements that we have signed up for. Second part on the IP, that's making sure that you have your right IP strategy. And of course, what you want to obtain there is a competitive advantage. You want to make indeed sure that you can stop your competition from just copying you. Okay, I see I have only 5 minutes and I'm only halfway my presentation. So that will be challenging. But anyway, I'll try to rush. Okay, so having that said, of course, you want to make sure that you have a competitive advantage, but you can also look into your right strategy. So for example, you have different kind of patent rights, or let's say IP rights. You have a patent, which is a hard right, but you also have trade secrets, for example, which are a soft right. And you will have to make a choice between the strategy that you apply, because you want to go for a patent, but then only if you're able to really make sure that you can really be able to detect infringement. Because if you cannot detect infringement, what's the sense of a patent? So for example, in chemical processing, you will see that people will not patent their IP, they will just keep it as a trade secret. So nobody knows how they do it. For example, that's what Coca-Cola is doing with the recipe. Then the fifth point, it's making sure you have a strong investor consortium. First of all, you need to assess how much money you need and whether indeed you need an external investor. If you go, for example, for a consultancy service, then maybe you can just start bootstrapped without an external investor. If you do need an investor, then make sure that you get a strong investor consortium around you. Because things might not always go as you want, and maybe there's a storm coming up and you need more money. So just make sure that your investors can also follow you even when things do not go as planned. And thirdly, of course, make sure that you have smart money. Just not only an investor who brings cash, but who can also bring a network, for example, who can bring additional value to you as a startup, so you can leverage from your investor. And then the last point, which is about regulatory and legislation. Just be aware, indeed, which legislations you need to comply to. There are loads of regulations these days you need to comply to, so just be aware and be mindful that you are aware of those upfront, so you're not wasting any time once you've started. So then a small question. I went through 6 important topics. Which of those do you think are the ones that are the top reasons why a spin-off is failing? Anybody who wants to try? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, indeed. So when I'm having this kind of presentation in front of engineers, most of the times they will point out about the port product. But I just want to have this slide in front of you so you can see there are a lot more things important that help to make sure you have a successful spin-off. So brings me to the last point. I'm just looking at Elaine. How much time can I buy from you? 5, okay. I'll just make sure I'll rush through things here. So I'll not talk much about the leap into the unknown that you will do when you create a spin-off. Just make sure we are there as a tech transfer office to assist you and to make sure it's not a shivering experience as you might think so. So here is the timeline of the whole process. So actually, yeah, at the first point when you get in touch with us, we will of course look whether indeed the spin-off will be appropriate. There's always the options of licensing, so it's good to make a real an honest assessment of what the best route will be for you. As mentioned, we will look at the 6 key ingredients to make sure indeed that you will be able to have a successful spin-off, and we will work with you to make sure that there's a good business plan and a financial plan available. Once the business plan is there, you can start pitching in front of the investors. And that's where we start the deal structuring and closing process. That's where you will start talking about how investors want to invest in your company. First thing you will do is make a term sheet, which is actually, let's say, a short version of all the terms and conditions that your investors ask before they want to invest into you. And once that is signed, then indeed we can start working on creating the final documents. At some point you will then set up the company. At that point that will just be an empty box because there's no IP in there, there's no investments in there. And once indeed that we are in front of the notary, we can sign all legal documents, and at the same time we will make sure that all the capital is going into the company, and we will also make sure that we transfer all the technology. And then you're off and you can start. So actually I have a few slides that goes deeper onto all these 3 steps. I'll be very brief, just to make sure I'm not spending too much time. So on the incubation phase, I've already spent a lot of time talking to you today about those 6 key ingredients. Just be aware that we as a tech transfer offer are able to support you on any of those 6 items, as you can see here marked in red. And the real goal is to make sure that you have a financial plan and a business plan that you can show to investors and you can take the next step. The next step, which is of course, closing a deal with your investors. And then we dig into the term sheet, as I mentioned before. That's a short version of all the terms and conditions that are required for an investor to invest into your company. You can see all the different items. I think just picking out a few, so at least you are aware of the terminology. So we have the valuation. In the valuation, we quite often speak about the pre-money. That's the value of our company before investors start investing. So it's the value that you bring with all your knowledge, with you as a person and the commitment that you take in the company, combined with the IP that we will transfer to the company. And then after that, you will have the post money. That's, of course, where you make the sum of the pre-money and the money that is invested into the company. Just be aware that there can also be liquidation preferences. Of course, investors are investing into a riskful endeavor to invest into your spin-off, and they want to make sure that they are first in line when things go wrong to get their money back. So they will ask something in return, and they want to make sure that they can de-risk their investment. And then the final thing I would just like to point out, that's the incentive program. We mostly also make sure that we foresee what we call an ESOP program. It's an employee stock option plan, which gives you the ability to incentivize key employees later on in the process if you hire very important persons in your company. I think I will quickly skip this one about valuation, and I'll immediately go into the final documents. So when you have your term sheet signed, then at that point you will appoint a translational law firm who will then actually make sure that it translates the term sheet into the final legal documents that you require. So you have the bylaws or the articles of association. There's the shareholders and the subscription agreement, which can be one document or two separate documents. There's the management contracts of all the people who, as founder, will start working in the company. And then finally, there's the transfer of the IP. And then, of course, if you have signed all documents, you've passed by the notary, then it's time for a celebration. But don't celebrate too hard, because you still need to grow the company. You need to make sure you can cross the chasm. So initially, you will work with customers which are, let's say, within your network or the early adopters, but just be aware that you will need to cross the chasm and to get to a sustainable business where you can attract more and more customers and have a really diversified customer base. If you want more information, because my time is up, I will refer to this book that you can read about it. And I'll briefly skip this slide. If you have any questions, then of course you can later on always pass by. I'll just stress the last point. Crossing the chasm is key. Make sure that you can extend your customer base to get in and to grow into a viable company. So that's all I wanted to tell you today. Just wanted to end with this one slide and bring KU Leuven KIK to your attention. KU Leuven KIK is our student entrepreneurship organization, but it's also open for researchers. So if you want to find trainings, want to participate in network events or testimonials like we will later on have today, then you're always welcome to participate. So that was my way too long presentation. I'm very sorry for that one, but I hope it was informative for all of you. Sure, absolutely, yes, no worries. Okay, yeah, indeed. So maybe just for the people who are online, I'll just repeat the question. I think the question that was asked is, so if you have the pre-money situation, that's of course a situation where the company only exists of a team, the people who are going to, or the founders who will go into the spin-off, and you have the IP from the university, and the question is, okay, what percentages will be, let's say, the separation between both? So I think there's a lot of a spread here. So I think it can go from 10% up to 40% that goes to the IP, but we as tech transfer offers, we really believe that we need to give our spin-offs, our founders, a real incentive. So we will always make sure that we can give the majority of the shares towards the founding team, because it's very important that they have the incentive to stay in the company, to grow the company, and for us that's very important. So certainly in engineering companies, we are most of the times able to do that. I do need to give a disclaimer. If you're more into the healthcare, things can be a little bit different, and certainly when we get other knowledge centers involved, then, for example, and I do certainly want to mention IMEC here, because within ESOT there are a lot of cooperations with IMEC, things can be a little bit different. But we have to, of course, work with all our partners here we're not the only ones who can decide sometimes on the IP. Yeah. Yeah, indeed. So just to repeat the questions for people online. So the question is indeed, are there good examples of companies who have crossed the chasm? I think, to be very honest, I think it's really challenging. And I see a lot of spin-offs really seeing it as a challenge. They are they are good in adopting people from their network, adopting early people, which goes quite smoothly, but then making the transition, it's quite challenging. I think there are a lot of spin-offs who have been really successful with that. Just to mention one, it's one of our first spin-offs that we created. It's LMS, it's Leuven Measurement Systems, was a software company really into measurement of frequency and data analysis. They were able to indeed expand over the world, and actually they were acquired by Siemens. They are now a separate division within Siemens, but still a separate division, and they're still continuing. But to be very honest, I think the panel will also be able to answer that question. It will give a lot of valuable input in how challenging it can be to cross the chasm. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. It was really interesting. A bit too long, but it was a nice presentation. So now it's time for our panel. You can come to the floor. Ziet u maar wat rechter, hoe dat gemakkelijk is. Hè. Ik ga jullie de microfoon geven. Ja. En dan kunt u wisselen.
Okay. Hélène, we can start with this panel? Perfect. Good evening. I'm curious to start asking first, how many of you are at the moment PhD researchers? Okay. Some postdocs? One? Master students? None? Maybe online, I'm not sure. Good to have you here. I guess you are at home. I think our panelists feel at home. And I need to say, I slept close by here, just next door at the lodge. It's some years ago, but since then I feel a little bit at home as well. My name is Steve Stevens. I'm the moderator of this panel. I'm asked by Hélène, thank you for that. And this is because we met earlier through Slushed, which Hélène was co-organizer of, but also through the doctoral course, inter-university course, Researchpreneurship Mindset. And that's a concept that I created for all Flanders University researchers to get aware of your personal entrepreneurial mindset. If you have this, if you got the guts to go for a business, if you have the right mindset to think as an entrepreneur and act as an entrepreneur. And I want to say you that this program takes place again in May 16th till 18th. And 4 KUL researchers can be part of this, so feel free to apply. I'm running a company which is named Heirloom Labs, and actually my focus audience is researchers, PhDs and postdocs. So I'm glad to see you here, and especially those PhDs and postdocs who aim to go for an entrepreneurial career path. It can be as an entrepreneur, building a spin-off, as we heard, building a startup, maybe joining a company as a co-founder, or it can also be an intrapreneur, being entrepreneurial within a company, within an organization, and there we do matchmaking. So we are on a mission, actually all across Europe, not only in Belgium, all across Europe, to bring researchers towards more impact beyond academia. So that's what I'm doing, and my background is in academia myself as well, not as a PhD, but I was director of the Center for Entrepreneurship at Ghent University for 10 years. I've been coaching more than 1,000 students and PhDs to start their business. I had the luck to do this, I need to say. And also have been working in the startup field, especially in the area of Ghent, Flanders, and a little bit in the rest of Europe. But that's enough for me. We are here especially for the panelists, and I like to introduce them to you, and I'll also give them the time to introduce themselves. So we have here in the middle, Jonas Engels, to start with, of Octave. Philip Jorissen from Builtwins, and then we have Kenneth van den Berg from Carbon+Alt+Delete. So please give them an applause to start with. And just to let you know how we will do this, and especially also for the people who are at home following the stream. So we're gonna do a panel discussion with the 3 panelists here. You will get the opportunity to ask some questions as well. I will do somehow in the middle of the talk and then at the end. So feel free to ask your questions. We're first gonna do interview in the front here. So yeah, meanwhile, keep your questions ready for the moment that we'll give you the floor to ask them. Let's start with Kenneth. And Kenneth, can you introduce yourself and Carbon+Alt+Delete?
Sure. This one is working, I guess, right? Good evening, everyone. I'm Kenneth from Carbon+Alt+Delete. I have a PhD also from the other side of the street at mechanical engineering. My fellow co-founder at Carbon+Alt+Delete, Hans-Peter, has a PhD from this home, from ESAT. We're the typical co-founder duo. I'm more on the business side. He's really the product guy, so he's coding, I can do the talking, right? You see how we divide the work still today. What we do at Carbon+Alt+Delete is we are a software company. We're not a spin-off, and our software helps companies to report on their carbon footprint and also to reduce it over time. So we serve the wave of upcoming regulation in Europe, where more and more companies need to report on a lot of sustainability metrics, and we've built a software solution around that that helps companies being compliant. In terms of maturity of the company, and then I'll stop to give you an idea. So we're now 4 years in operation, slightly over 4 years, with a team of around 15 people. I think we are beyond the pure startup phase and now slowly entering into the scale-up phase. I'm not sure if we're already across the chasm or not. Maybe we will still fall on it, you know. You have stories of companies of 100 million turnover that still have not crossed the chasm. So it's a topic on its own. But I believe this gives you a first introduction on myself and what we do at Carbon+Alt+Delete.
And if I saw it right, you just won a prize for today or yesterday?
Yes, so we're active also in the UK, and there indeed we received a prize on Best Carbon Accounting Software in the UK, which is of course a great marketing material, which we will then use to the largest extent possible, right, to make everyone aware of that. So yes, that definitely helps.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Okay, if you could give the mic to Jonas.
Yes, hello.
Yeah.
So I'm Jonas from Octave. And at Octave, we're specialized in battery energy storage systems for SMEs and industry. So we started off with second life battery energy storage systems and energy management for battery energy storage systems. Today we're also doing first life battery energy storage systems, and we're expanding more and more in the energy management fields, where we do not only operate batteries but also PV panels, solar PV panels, electric EV chargers, and generally the energy management of small medium enterprises and industry. in terms of company, I think we're about the same. We started, we just discussed it before. We started about the same moment as Kenneth in 2020. We're also now around 15 people. And so we've been growing a lot. We started our first commercial traction really 3 years ago, and since then we've been in a growing market, which has helped us quite a lot. And yeah, I think we've been able to continue that growth in the past couple of years. And yeah.
Okay, that's good to start with. Philippe, can you introduce yourself as well?
Of course. Good evening, everyone. So, Philippe from Builtwins. We started in 2022, so we're operational now for 2.5 years. We offer a service that essentially optimizes the energy consumption of your building. So we reduce energy use of cooling, ventilation, and heating in buildings by optimally controlling the various devices that are in there. And that's something that we're currently doing as a service, but then towards the future, we want to evolve more towards software as a service type of company. So we're now sort of developing a whole framework that we're using ourselves, and then we want to eventually offer that framework to scale towards more clients and internationally. And I'm also, I also have a PhD at mechanical engineering, but I also studied energy engineering here and electrical engineering, computer science. And the fun is that I can combine all of that. So I'm more like the technical guy of the two. So we're two co-founders. I'm more still doing the technical development, and Damien is more the business sales type of person. But that doesn't mean I can't explain what we're doing, of course.
Okay, but that goes back to the complementary team.
Yeah.
You're complementary to one another, I guess?
Yeah, indeed. So I think it was mentioned a few times today already that team is important. And back in the days, I was like, yeah, sure. But yeah, it is important. In that sense, we're actually not a very good team, and this is something that we know. We're still two technical guys. We don't do really marketing right now. It's partly deliberately because we know we can't follow if we have too much traction right now. But there are a few tasks that neither of us really likes doing, and things like that. It's something that we know that we have to focus on.
Yeah, I was wondering the name Builtwins, the twin in it.
Yeah. That's something. For us, it was like so obvious that it comes from digital twins, because as a researcher, we are very familiar with that term. So the idea is that you have a building twin, and that is then together Builtwins. But often people read it as built wins, like you win something.
Okay.
And then they start throwing in 2 T's or a D or whatever, and it's confusing because now the sector organization is called Builtwise, and naming is also something I actually took about a year to find a good name.
Yeah, I was wondering how long it took.
Especially if you want to find the .com URL. And,
your Carbon+Alt+Delete name is also quite interesting. How did you come up with that one?
I'm about to say Builtwin is kind of great. That's typically, you're not a marketeer, Philippe, clearly. A marketeer would love that. On Carbon+Alt+Delete, I think we actually started as a non-profit side project during our PhD. And I'm not even sure anymore who came up with the name Carbon+Alt+Delete. And now, of course, it's kind of very clear that it has to do something with software and something with carbon. I only had once in a sales call someone who said, I really don't like the name of the company. It reminds me of Microsoft, and I'm 100% an Apple guy. So we only had once a negative reaction on that. But now we have Carbon+Alt+Delete. It's just, we're so used to it. We might at one point get into troubles with the pluses, because we have Carbon+Alt+Delete. So maybe at one time we need to rebrand the name a bit. But yeah, it sticks with people, so it turns out to be a good name.
That's interesting indeed, and good marketing. You are in your team. Are you complementary to one another?
Yes, absolutely. But to be honest, it turned out to be more by accident than by design.
Okay.
So we basically, I took the initiative to start looking for a technical co-founder, because I'm more a business founder. I'm not the one that can read and write and build the code. And then, of course, you start looking at your own network. and I ended up talking to Hans-Peter, who has a very similar education, right? So also an engineer by training, also a PhD. And to be honest, that is only we found it out when working together. We have completely different personalities, which is a challenge, but if you manage that properly, it's a great asset to the company. So if we take decisions, I do a lot of talking, but in the end, he's the one who really makes the call. I'm the guy who tried to overanalyze stuff, and he's more the gut feeling guy. But when those two align, then we're pretty sure that we take the right decision as a company. From day one, we also had a very clear divide and conquer, right? Because you are very limited by resources. So if the full team is working on one topic and using the time inefficient, that's also a waste of time. So that has been great. And I want to re-stress the point that also was made before. I was even thinking on your slide, why do startups fail? That the number one reason, at least what I was heard, are founder conflicts. And they might not be obvious, but then result into not enough market fit, not finding funding, etc. But founder issues, it's really, I think, the number one. It's really like marrying someone, right? I'm not sure if some of you are already married.
With the contract, I guess.
Yeah, so but if you get into a fight, it's a very painful divorce. If you get along together, 1 + 1 is 3, right? So it's very, very similar to that extent.
Yeah. Jonas, how about your team? Because they have PhD teams in their company. How about you?
Yeah, so we're actually 3 founders instead of 2, so that's a bit different. And of these 3 founders, I've done a PhD, also here at ASAT. I forgot to mention it earlier. But the other 2, they have not. And we actually met just after our master studies. So I didn't directly after my master when doing to a PhD. First worked around 9 months in consultancy. And we all 3 worked on the same project at Engie. So already in the energy sector, that's where we met. Then I went doing my PhD, and it's only after that that we joined again together to start the company, Octave. It was actually, mainly the initiative of Maxime. But yeah, having a good team and not only a good founder team, but I think also the very first hires and the second hires that you do are very important and very crucial to the success of a company and a startup, and the division of the work, of course, because having it's very difficult, I think, to find good people, especially but especially these first people that you hire, those are the people that also need to make it happen together with you as a founder, and you really need to be able to trust them 100%. And I think that's very important as well.
So you actually search for the entrepreneurial people who actually somehow take the responsibility with you, or?
Yes, you search for people that can work independently, because you don't have a big, you're not a multinational, you don't have a big team, you cannot really guide everybody, that have a lot of sense of responsibility, and that are also good fit with the founding team, right? And that believe in the mission. And I think that's very important, that they really believe in the mission and they're fully motivated, 100% motivated, or even more, right? Because as a founder, you most likely are more than 100% motivated, but it's very important, I think, that your employees, and especially the first ones, are as well, that they can follow you in that journey. Yeah,
because running a business from scratch, starting it up, it's a hard deal, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, it's hard work, and you need to be fully committed. It's for me, it's completely different than working for a boss, let's say. And in a standard company, and especially a startup, you meet so many challenges, and you really need to believe in what you're doing. Otherwise, if not for the first challenge you meet, it's the second or the third challenge. But you won't succeed, and that persistence and that belief that you can do it, it's important. Yeah.
Okay, Kenneth, you wanted to add something about personnel, or
no? Maybe still on the founders topic.
Yeah.
So, to share some advice, if I may. So, what you typically hear is that single founder companies is often a red flag with investors, right? Because in the end, investors, in particular early stage investors, mainly invest in the team, and if it's one person and you get sick tomorrow, the company dies. The flip side of that is, I think, the ideal is 2 or 3 founders. So if you pitch and you have 4 founders for a company of 4 people, then you get questions, okay, what is everyone doing? And then how are the roles and responsibilities divided? And speaking in front of mainly a technical audience, my advice would be look for a very commercial founder. Ideally, you have worked together in a professional setup, because that also gives comfort to people around that you know each other from a professional context. And that's, I think, then the ideal combination. 2, 3 founders, technical people, commercial people, work together in a professional context before, and with a very clear distinction of roles and responsibilities. So if you can build a team like that, that's a lot of tick boxes that you can tick.
Philippe, I see you are agreeing, but from one side, I wonder how you look at the investment side and the journey for a startup in that sense.
Yeah, so I'm agreeing in the sense that it really helps to have a commercial person, but then, yeah, what you mentioned is slightly different, but what springs to mind is that we bootstrapped, is that perhaps what you're hinting at?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we didn't go to fund in investors yet. Actually, we had a talk today, which has been a very long time. We started bootstrapping because we had the idea we're not ready to really kick off this product. We're working with nonlinear optimal control, so model predictive control, which is not an easy problem to solve, and we had to build a framework to do that systematically, so that it works every time and again for every building, again and again. And that's something that it took us 9 years to get it working on a first project in research, and we simply weren't ready to scale that up. So we figured, if we get a VC now, first it's going to be hard to convince him with the development roadmap ahead of us, and we'll have a VC pushing us in the back from day one, pushing to get more clients, and for sure you get either burnt out because of stress, or you run into a brick wall because suddenly it doesn't work anymore, and you simply don't have the manpower to cover all of that. So we took a deliberate choice not to raise money, and then of course the team hasn't been an issue because we didn't talk to VCs yet, but that's like a bit now on our agenda to, yeah. Suppose at some point we think we are ready, we want to raise money, that's something we have to look into.
Okay, and we heard some things about collaboration and research, licensing, spin-off from the LRD side. I think you are the closest to one of the 3 from the speakers we have here, because none of you is a spin-off, but can you explain?
Yeah, so first thing is, are we a spin-off? By definition, depends on definition, we are not, because LRD is not a shareholder, we have a license agreement. But it's true that we are using the software that we wrote during our PhDs within the company, and we have a license agreement with Leuven to do that. And that's, of course, a key asset for the business that we do, and it's very important to be able to use that, otherwise we would have to essentially do our PhDs again. Also, there is an argument to be made that having a good connection with the university, it helps at some point, of course. So it was a bit of a track to navigate through the different options, let's say, because initially the plan was we would become a spin-off, but then sort of last minute that's changed. So that was quite a challenge, in fact, and it's not an easy process, let's say. It's something. It also takes time, and it really helps that you know what you want. It really helps also with that you know what's possible, and that was for us not always clear from the start. So make sure you ask a lot of questions.
And there is among your team members one professor.
Yes. So Leuven Helsen, she's co-founder. She is, in that sense, a team member, but she's not operationally involved. We do still collaborate within research projects. So there are 2 Horizon 2020 projects, or Horizon Europe it's called nowadays, that we were able to get, and that's to a large extent thanks to the collaboration with the research group that we were able to join that project, and that's very nice also. That is a way of funding that we managed to get done instead of VC funding.
And there are still links with research as well here.
Yeah, so we collaborate within those projects with the research group. Many of the PhD students of the research group are also using our software to do their research. There are also some master theses working on that. So that's indeed a nice collaboration.
Okay. Kenneth, you were mentioning that actually you are more the commercial guy in the team, but you have your PhD in engineering. That's right, huh?
So what went wrong? Is that your question?
No. I saw you also have a master in management. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
So is that the reason why you are thinking so commercially as well?
But I think maybe 2 points to answer your question, right? So I always have been interested indeed also in the business side. So also during my PhD, I also worked sometimes together with people from the team of Stef Prost back then, so economics professor on energy. So I always have been interested in more the economy business side of it. After my PhD, I also went a couple of years to management consulting at the Boston Consulting Group. So I always have had this interest more in the business side of things. The other aspect is, although I've said that if you're pure engineers, look for a commercial profile, the good thing to know is like no one can sell the product as good as a founder, right? You come in with a certain benefit because you have created the company, you have co-created the product, you sell from that position, which is a very strong starting position, right? And then I had the luck to have someone coaching me on the sales aspect as well, right? Because there's also kind of an art to it, to feel when you just need to build a relationship and when you need to push. So that's definitely a set skill that you need to learn. But I think the starting point, understanding the product, selling as a founder, is a strong commercial standing point. In particular, if you sell to other experts as well, right? You're not selling vacuum cleaners from door to door, but we sell software to sustainability experts who know the protocols that we use to build our software on very much in detail. So if you then can discuss with them on the nitty-gritty details of the product, that's a hard skill. And then that's a very good point, but then you just need to have the Fingerspitzengefühl, which you develop over time. So, okay, now the nerdy talk is done. It's time to talk business and to push or not push. And that's the additional skills that I think I've been able to develop a bit with the help of an external advisor.
And where was that advisor? Was that while you were already running the company or during the PhD? Or
No. So that was, we did a funding round 2 years after establishing the company. A business angel round. I don't know whether we can get to a point where we discuss the different types of investments. And it was someone who is about 3-4 years older than me. He's also an engineer by training, but went into sales as of day one. So there are engineers that go into sales. But he was selling very complex software on data security to big banks. Had a lot of experience in sales, processes, outreach, cold leads, hot leads, closing, etc. And he has been coaching me because he also invested in the company.
Interesting.
So it's we have been lucky to have smart money.
That's good. Yeah, indeed. Not only money, but also some experience with it.
Yes. And
network, maybe?
Yes,
network
absolutely. Yeah. And I don't really like the term smart money because you just need to know what you need as a founder. Either you need money or you need advice. And you have perfectly people that give advice without investing in the company or the other way around. Sometimes it can come together, but it absolutely doesn't have to, right?
I saw that Philip wanted to add something about the sales, I think. Yeah,
indeed. I just wanted to quickly agree that in the sales part, so I said we're both not the biggest sales, but it's very important to do it yourself. The way I look at it, business or starting a company is solving a big problem. And the further you go, the more facets pop up there, but it's all things you need to consider and take into account when doing that, and understanding the client's need is a very important thing there, because that's the guy eventually is going to buy your product. And it's not just the technical aspects of that, but even the position of that person within the company. Perhaps you don't have to talk to the guy who's in charge of the maintenance of the machines, but just the financial director, because he's eventually going to talk about the budgets. So you may have to do your sales pitch 2 or 3 times within the same company. And if you just hire the sales guy and you gave him the instruction, talk to the engineering guy, and it doesn't work, maybe he won't have the reflex to look further and things like that. And so it's important to do that yourself as well.
Okay, Jonas, you as a CTO within your company, do you do some sales yourself?
I used to in the beginning, so it's exactly true what they say, that especially in the beginning, I think it's very important as a founder to also go out there in the market, even if you're a technical profile, even if you have another co-founder which has a more commercial profile and does more the commercial leading, let's say. It's still very important, I think, even as a technical founder, to go out there to understand your customers, because especially I think as a technical founder and especially with academic background, you might have a very particular idea about how the product should look like, because it's your research, maybe it's what you designed and it should be like this, like this, like this. But in the end, it's the customer that will pay for the product, right? And it's if you don't build something that the customer likes, but only you like, you won't sell it. So I think it's very important, even as a technical founder, to have at least a little bit of commercial feeling, talking to your customers, to the clients, to understand what they want and to build what they want, and of course align that as much with the technology that you're developing.
Yeah, and you actually, when doing your PhD, it was actually already a collaboration. You did your research. Can you explain something about that?
Yeah, so I did a backland mandate, which is a cooperation between a company and a university. And then there's 2 forms. You can work for the university and have the collaboration with the company, or be employed by the company and work in collaboration with the university. I worked at the company. The company itself was also a startup in Antwerp. Restore, they were called. They were doing demand response, so steering of flexible assets of industrial processes. And for me, that was very interesting. So that fact that I was able to do some research, be in academia, but also see that company. I say it started by the time I started. It was maybe already a scale up. It was already a bit bigger. But seeing that process of that company and being able to not only just focus on let's say new mathematical methods to further optimize batteries, in my case. But also understanding how to be able to sell that, what the customer needs, and seeing that sales team and that a developer team implementing some it's not only about big mathematical or let's say research topics, but often development, it's about stupid details like a button that needs to be there, or a button that doesn't do what you want to do. It's often about these kind of things that are also important, and understanding that and having that hybrid form of both industry and academia was for me very important. And I think it helped me a lot afterwards when I started Octave with Maxime and Nico. Yeah.
Well, we come back to that, because these 2 types of cultures, they sometimes are very different. I'm curious to hear more about that. But Kenneth, you wanted to add something to the former?
You can stop me from interrupting, Steve. Sorry, just because I like the topic. No, I just wanted to add a kind of a quote that I once heard, like, a real engineer, a real product guy, they think sales need me, sales cannot sell anything without my product. The company will not run without my product, which is true to a certain extent. If you talk to real salespeople, they say, I'm so good, I can sell something on paper. We don't need the product, not yet. I can start running the company just by sales, right? And of course, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I've seen, I cannot do it myself, right? But I've seen very good commercial people selling something on paper, getting in the money, and then use that money to build it on the backside, right? And that's of course the ideal world, because then you really have already a contract, have a commitment, and you know what to build. In practice, it's very difficult, and it also puts a lot of stress, because then you have deadlines, etc., etc. But just be aware that that's also a skill, this sales skill. And some people are really able to approach it from first the sales angle, and then let's build a product after the sales. Well, I think everyone here in this room including myself, will always still start from the product, but you can also approach it the other way
Well,
around.
it was something that was mentioned before as well, the product push into the market and the state-of-the-art product you aim to have. The TRL needs to be high. How do you look at that being in business now?
I think in general, there are still a lot of startups or solutions looking for a problem, basically, right? So a lot of companies with a very nice product, but it's a solution looking for a problem. And to a certain extent, like blockchain is still the case, right? It's still kind of a solution looking for a problem. And even to a certain extent, AI, where you see that, okay, the large language models are great, but then implementing it in real-life applications to deliver on the time savings, you see that still a lot of companies, startups are still struggling to deliver on that value, right? So if you start from a product, which is what you would typically do in a research environment, starting from your IP, just be very much aware that you are not building a company around a solution that is still looking for a problem to solve. And I think that's a trap in particular from an engineer founding team that is maybe one of the main traps that you could stumble into.
Don't over-engineer.
No, exactly, and probably your research might be 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead of the market, right? So you might build maybe like the first very crappy model that you've built during the first year of your PhD to test it out. Maybe that's what the market needs today, which doesn't mean that everything that you have been doing in year 2, 3, 4 is not of value, but maybe only in 5 years from now. And you need to make sure that you're still existing 5 years from now. But I think that's the full part of the market research that needs to be done. And yeah, you're probably ahead of the market. That's the point I wanted to make.
At least for the people with AI, there will be a big a money push inside the market right now, all over the world. So yeah, might be helpful.
That's another topic we can discuss on funding and what type of funding that you need to do. And the first question is, do you need it, right? Anyway.
Yeah, okay, Flip.
Yeah, one of the pitfalls that I found was you're doing a PhD and you're a lot in product development, and after a while you're like, yeah, I can do this. I know the problem. I know what we can do and how to solve it. And then at some point you're starting a business and you simply don't realize how little you know about the market you're in. And it's by taking steps in there that you start to discover, like, oh shit, this building, the energy savings, but there's someone who owns the building, there's someone who builds the building, there's someone who rents the building, there's someone who maintains the building, and there's a subcontractor. And who am I going to sell this thing to? And so you don't realize that there's a complexity in your technology, but there's also complexity in the market. And it's only when you start going out there that you figure out how things are working there. And all of that is something you still have to discover and take into account as well.
Okay. Jonas, you were in academia, working together with a startup that was scaling at that time. Then it became a corporate, or it was bought by corporate.
Exactly, yeah.
So how did you see the changes there in how to look at the different perspectives?
You mean like between then the academia startup and the corporate? Yeah. That's those are 3 different worlds, I think. You have academia, where basically you get all the time, or not all the time you need, but a lot of time to really dive in depth in a certain topic, and you have a lot of freedom. And I think that's very valuable, and I would really advise to use that freedom to explore what you want, and then try out things, and not only scientific things, but also why not try out some, talk to potential customers or go out in the market. I mean, it's a possibility you have as a researcher. And then there's this startup, and in a startup, it's all about finding that product market fit, making sure you comply with your customers' needs, you answer to that question, delivering on time, and there's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure because you need to deliver. There is a funding round, you need to get certain KPIs. But it's also very exciting because you have this entire team, you're building something at a very fast pace typically, at least that's what I experienced. And then at a certain moment that startup was bought by a corporate, and yeah, in the beginning you're still at the startup culture, but after a while it began to become a bit more corporate, and you see, yeah, it becomes a bit more political, and that very initial startup spirit that fades a little bit away. It's more like, yeah, this is my role and this is my role and that's your responsibility, and you're not really this one big team working towards this one big goal. Yeah, now I sound very negative about corporates.
But you prefer the startup life.
I do prefer, to have this and as a startup, to have this focus and this drive. I think, I like that much more than, but it's a bit personal.
Yeah.
But maybe,
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Maybe some people in the room are there people here who believe they want to start a business themselves? Someone? Or either prefer to work in a bigger company? No? Stay in academia?
Not work at all.
Others? Okay. I first give you the opportunity to ask maybe your first questions. Helene, are there online questions? I don't know. Okay, yeah.
Maybe a question for the whole panel, but specifically Kenneth. So I see the purpose of a non-technical founder and why it's a huge value to the company. But let's say you have a company that takes 5 years to get a product ready and get to market. How do you, as a non-technical founder, keep adding value and keep your day-to-day while the technical team works on the product?
Kenneth, are you willing to answer?
I can try, right? So but there is definitely also work to do on the market. I think Philippe gave a great example, like who is your client? And for instance, if I would be the non-technical guy, you know, what is the product in 5 years? What is the value that you will deliver? What is the pain that you will solve? Make a slide deck and go out and talk to 100 people and get feedback, reiterate, and that was great product feedback. We have not yet talked about pricing. How much will you charge about your product? How is it a fixed fee? Is it a recurring fee? The only way to figure it out is to go to people, say, hey, this is the price, and see how they react. So there's a lot of this type of work to be done. And that needs to be done by a commercial founder, but that person should also very much understand the product, because he should translate the reactions of the potential buyers into something that then can feed into the product team, right? If you're really 5 years ahead of go-to-market, that might be a bit too early, so I'm not sure about the exact timelines. You also need to make sure that you can survive financially 5 years, of course. But I think also for us, we have not gone to market fast enough, basically. And I'm not sure about the others, but I think if you ask 80% of the startups will say we should have gone to the market faster. 10% probably will say it was okay, and only 10% will say we went too fast to the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Philippe? Yeah.
It's funny that we're the bootstrapping people, and I'm like, oh yeah, we want to work it on at the right time. So we started, and we had first clients or interested clients straight away. But the truth is, of course, that we did 5 years in PhD plus 5 postdoc, which was sort of also time spent on a lot of the preparations that would otherwise be done in the company. And your question, I think 5 years is long. That you've.
I'm specifically mentioning like biomedical devices that take like a long time for certification and development.
Yeah, I don't think we have too much experience on that to put that into context. But I would think it's a shorter period for a typical tech startup, and that you can go to sales rather almost straight away and start exploring what that Kenneth said.
It's IP linked?
Well, just the development, for example, like chip devices, takes already a couple of years. Then getting it certified takes 2-3 years maybe in the biomedical setting. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, in the biomedical scene, and maybe you need to talk with the people of LRD here, it can take like 10 years for getting certified. The certification in 1 is quite okay, but certification 2 takes a very long time, takes a lot of money. But I know if your IP is linked with your research and that's what you bring to market, then yeah, LRD is the party to talk with in that sense for the guidance over these periods. If not, maybe still you need to talk or yeah, search for financial support. But Jonas, you have something.
I also don't have experience in the biomedical sector, right? But if you wanna bridge that gap and you need that amount of time, you also need some money you need to be able to survive these 5 years. You need a business plan. You need to understand. You need to find funding, and you also need skills for that, right? And if you're as a founder doing that, and don't underestimate it. It's a lot of work, getting funding and building a business plan and interacting with all stakeholders. That's a full-time job almost. So if you're doing that, you're not working on the product. If you then need other people to work on the product, so that's also work to be done. It's not only pure commercial sales. It's talking to potential customers, getting LOIs, whatever, or researching funding. And there's a lot of work to do, which I think needs to be done. And if it's a long time, you still need to bridge that, right? So
and you went through that process of funding.
Yes. We got a seed funding round, but it didn't take 5 years for us. So we were pretty quickly to the market. And to respond on the comment of Kenneth, I think we're also pretty much on time on the market, pushed by our investors, I have to say. But I think that was in the end a good thing.
And you crossed the chasm already?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but I do have the impression that today, and we're a bit held by market circumstances there, but our offering is picking up, is picked up by a large amount of customers. So we do see that scalable growth occurring right now. Yeah, at least a certain part of our products that we are bringing in the market. Yeah.
Okay, Kenneth, yeah.
If I can still add one more thing, because I think you make a valid point. So I think we're all mainly software startups, software entrepreneurs, where the iteration of the agility or the iteration have way shorter lead times, so you can pivot way quicker. The flip side of that is that you also have way more competition because there is the barrier to enter is lower. It also means that as a founder, the risk reward is different, right? We indeed give less shares away to investors. I think the example you mentioned on biotech is, for instance, LRD might take a bit more if indeed it's very long lead times. That's also that story. So if a software entrepreneur, short lead times, you can iterate quickly, you have more competition, but you need to give less away typically to investors. My salary is also, I will not talk for the others, but Hans-Peter and I were still the cheapest resource in the team, right? Because if you get a software thing growing, it's very scalable, and the probability that you get there is slightly higher than in very deep tech sectors, biotech, chip technology. So everything that I've been saying was from that software point of view. I think indeed if you are really in deep tech with 5 years of development and then you have this big go, no-go moment if you need to get external validation or certification, that's indeed a different game where you probably need to give more of the shares away, right? Because you need to survive longer without any revenue. I'm not sure, but I've heard that those founders are typically also better paid during those first 5 years than software founders because you have a lower probability that you will have the upside, right? So if you're not being paid the first 5 years and then only have a 2% chance to get there, that might not be too interesting. So it's a different risk-reward thing. So that's indeed that's a specific context than in your sector. But I think in general, my main point is that know that as an engineer, you have a bias to be over-focused on the product. Just be aware of your own bias. Even if you're 5 years away from the market, start to think or ask questions to someone else about, hey, what is the market side of the story?
Yeah. Maybe a second question. I don't know. Yeah, okay.
Organization
Mhm.
and university, but also banks and things like that. How did you select the organizations or get the right point to ask help from?
Yeah, and maybe for the people at home, so how did you select for organizations to cooperate with? There are a lot of organizations supporting startups and such things.
Yeah, so we participated in the IMEC iStart program, which I'm not sure if you know, but I think it's one of the bigger incubator programs in Belgium, or the biggest one. It's a very well-known program, and we've heard experiences from other founders that it was very good, and it's I can also say that it has been very good for us. So that's for instance a way to as a founder to learn about these things, to get the necessary support, to get access to that investor network, right? Because obviously we didn't have that, and to get trainings on sales, on product development, on investor pitching, on whatever. So these kind of programs for us have been very helpful. So I can, especially as a technical founder or first-time founder, I can highly recommend these kind of things.
Yeah, Kenneth or Philippe, yeah?
Yeah, in terms of programs, there are indeed the usual suspects, let's say. I also followed the KIC energy program back in the days while still doing my PhD. I think that was one of the first things.
EIT?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was very useful. It shows, it sort of puts some things on the radar that okay, these are the things I more or less need to be concerned about. And then in addition to that, I'm not really the proactive, gonna talk to some people kind of guy. I bought some books and read some books about things that seem to capture a lot of the aspects and wrestled myself to that. And at some point you just have to go out there and more or less these are the things I need to figure out or have a discussion about, and off you go.
Yeah. Kenneth, you didn't go through program, I guess?
No, we did a lot of programs. So we also did KBC started, even some VOCA program. So there are a lot of good programs to count. I would say do one for a year, but don't overdo it, because there is also an industry around giving
programs.
General advice on startups, and no one knows the market and the product as well as you. And now I hope I will not have said it myself, but like a startup advisor would say, do this, that always works. An entrepreneur would say, in my context, we have tried this, that worked, and this didn't work. Do with it what you think you should do with it in your market, in your context. So I would say after a year going through one of those programs, then just think for yourself, okay, what are my weaknesses, what are my strengths, and do I have people, like specific persons that I can talk to one-on-one to help me with my weaknesses or points of improvement. And that I found way more helpful than going the third and the second and the third year, do another general coaching program.
Yep. Thank you. I think you also need to have the perspective internationally, because mostly we look to the regional programs. And you also need to be aware what is happening around the world in your area, the phase you are at, what you're searching for. Is it money? Is it advice? Is it training and skills? So it depends on what you need, I guess. Kenneth, linked with that, I saw that you actually are entrepreneurial from even before you did your master's. You went to Argentina, is that correct? And you won Start Academy while you were a master's student, so you have always been interested in entrepreneurship, I guess.
Yes, but I would not call it true. Yeah, yes, it was entrepreneurship, but not with the risk of really having an own company.
It was no business.
Sorry?
It wasn't the business at that moment.
No. So I have always have been indeed. It gave me always a lot of energy to, like, with a small team, build something and see it grow, right? And that was also a student organization is something similar, right? And I was part of Humasol for a couple of years, which is a student organization. I went abroad to do a project, build a solar boiler for a school in Argentina, which was kind of an entrepreneurial project, right? You have some resources limited, you have a small team, and you try to have a working product towards the end. But there was not the same level of entrepreneurship. It was not a separate business with a business plan that should be profitable, etc. It was experimenting, let's say. But it has been in the back of my head to do something myself, to start my own company, indeed, since I was a student.
But for people who never run a business before, would you advise to do something like your volunteering work that you did, being part in programs to learn the skills and such things?
But I would almost reverse it, right? If you have never had the eagerness to do something with a small team, do something entrepreneurial, be part of, it's very broad, right? Be part of VTK or do something besides, quote unquote, just following your classes, it might mean that you are not an entrepreneurial person, which is perfectly fine. So I would not say you need to do this. You need to do these type of things to become an entrepreneur. It's more the other way around. If you don't do them, then maybe you're not that type of person. Again, which is perfectly fine, but it's kind of a personality test for yourself.
Yeah, good advice. And you have something in common because Jonas has also been in Argentina.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, but that was not to build. There was actually an exchange program between my high school and university. I lived there for a year. But yeah, something completely different.
But yeah, also a little bit entrepreneurial already, also doing Erasmus while you were doing your masters, I saw.
Yeah. But again, an Erasmus, right?
Okay. To go to funding again, you were talking about IMEC iStart program, but you also had EIC funding.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah,
European funding?
Yeah, so EIC, it's part of the Horizon Europe program. So it's kind of it's a program where you first get, and it's actually quite interesting. If you're in academia and you want to develop your research further into a product and a company, so you first can get a subsidy to develop your product. Further and to reach that TRL9 level, which they say then you can go to the market. And then as a next step on the subsidy, you can get further investments from the EIC fund to further develop that market and to build the product and to go to the market. So when we started the company, we were looking for ways of funding because we started really with the idea of doing second life battery energy storage systems, and that's hardware, so that requires some money to start developing that. A lot of investors in Belgium, they're not very keen on investing into hardware money. We were looking at other sources, and then this AIC program was one of them. It was quite difficult to get in, and so it's quite competitive. But one of the good things there as well that so you first need to submit a paper application, I think, and then you get some guidance of a coach.
Almost like doing a publication, no?
I think it was much harder than doing a publication. But the guidance of that coach, because then you need to write is basically a whole business plan, right? And that was the first time that we as founders needed to write a fully detailed business plan, and you need to think about everything. You need to think about, okay, which is my product and which are my competitions and how am I gonna put that product in the market? I'm gonna go directly to the customers. I'm gonna go via channels. What's the pricing gonna be? What are the risks? I mean, you need to think about everything. And doing that reflection, it takes a lot of time and effort, but it's also very good because for me, it has learned me a lot of thinking about it, and it's like doing a mini MBA, right? So you really learn how a business works, and even as a technical founder, it's very important because you're still a founder, you're still head of the business, right? So
yeah. And is it correct that you need patents to be part of or to have the funding of
for EIC, it helps. It's not a strict requirement, but it helps if you have some patent applications.
And you have patents pending.
So we submitted one patent before that, and one occurred during the project, but both are still pending. I don't know if you've ever been through a patent process, but it's a very lengthy process.
Philippe, do you have patents linked with your business?
No, so it's been mentioned today that the one strategy is just to keep it secret, and that's what we're doing, because you can't know what your competition is running in terms of software on their computers. but we are fighting against some other party's patent, which has been a process that's been going on for 5 years or something. So
Yeah, and
that's
because
why I
of
was
their...
nodding, it's a lengthy process.
Okay, and is it a competitor with a lot of funding in it?
Yeah.
Yeah. While you are bootstrapping at the same time?
Yeah,
so
it's our
how
own
does
time,
that go?
of course, that we're putting in there. So that's cheap relatively, but yeah, there's only so many days in a week. So yeah, it's something we come now to a point that we're like, it's been enough, and we got to some stage that it was half and half rejected, let's say, and we're not going to put further effort into it.
Yeah, and are you willing to look for funding towards the future then, or
For patents for ourselves, you mean?
maybe? Yeah.
The strategy is to keep it secret right now. I think that's the best. I've also heard that investors like patents, and I'm like, yeah, sure, you can like it, but does that mean that I have to start writing patents that are useless? I don't think so. So right now I'm like, nah, not gonna do it.
So you prefer to build your client base, I guess, instead of having patents?
Actually create value instead of ticking boxes. That's what I like doing.
Yeah. Okay. Question?
Yeah. Yeah. Either of the two can be a strategy, but it has to be a strategy. We are closed source by choice because we need to be able to protect what we have. But we do build upon an open source project. So we took a GPL project and we were building from that. And actually that project has been taken offline since, because the company who was developing it, they didn't have enough feedback from the community to even just keep alive the open source part of it. So at some point you're in such a niche market that the people with enough expertise to contribute, it's so small that the risk you're taking by putting it out there, and that a big party can just take it and go running with all your IP, that it's not worth it. And there are some very clear cases where this is opposite, like Linux, the Linux kernel and things, but that's a much larger user base. So there are a lot more people profiting from it. Instead, like in our case, there may be 1 or 2, 3, 4 companies that contribute to it, but then they're competing with each other. So then it's definitely, in my opinion, not a good idea. Second issue there is that from a research perspective, it's often being done like, it sounds like the holy grail, like, oh, I made some great piece of code and I want to put it open source after my PhD, which by itself is great. But don't forget, if there is no support for that piece of code, it's going to die. Because there are bugs in it. You can be sure of it that there are bugs in the code that you wrote. And if there's no one to solve them for it, what's going to happen? Someone is going to bump into 3 bugs and figure out, it's not working, it's going to make an issue, there's no response, and then it stops. So it really has to be a strategy. So there has to be someone then really continuing that development and offering support for it in the long term, like say 5 years or something, and then people can probably start believing, okay, this really, it will continue there. And one of the very good examples is Kasari. We use Kasari, and it's a great software tool. And very nice work that Joris and Joel are doing. But one of the major things that they're offering is the support there and the community. So just putting open source software by itself is not going to create enough value, in my opinion.
Any other opinion, or maybe shared opinion?
For me, it's about 3 things, right? It's about a legal thing, a product development thing, and a commercial thing, and it are separate things. I think from a legal point of view, so IP and patenting, I've always understood that getting patents on software is basically meaningless. I know there are people in the room who know way more about it. I can imagine it's also sometimes a point of discussion, right? The code that you write, to what extent can it be valued under IP? We don't put effort in putting a patent on our code. By the time you get it, the code is anyhow outdated, right? From a product point of view, I think Philippe mentioned a lot of good things, right? It's about improving quality of the product, having more people to contribute it. And then commercially, it can be or not be a commercial strategy as well, right? Where with open source, you can very quickly create a network effect. In particular, if you have a technical product that you sell to coders, right? So open source software security code, for instance, might very quickly create a network effect. But of course, at one point, you also need to have a business model around it to convert it then to, pay revenues. And there in Belgium, Odoo, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the company Odoo, which is one of the few unicorns that we have in Belgium, founded by an engineer from Leuven, right?
Yeah,
Leuven.
Leuven.
They're now a unicorn. They exist for 10, 15 years. They have been open source as of day one. They have been almost bankrupt for 10 years. And then suddenly they found the switch. And now they are a unicorn, right? So it's definitely not an easy walk to offer your code as open source. But I think if you look for inspiration on how to build a business around an open source model, Odoo could be an inspiring example to look at.
Any other strategies that you use to put yourself in the market? I saw B Corp on your website.
Yes, so we're in the sustainability space. We also originate as Carbon+Alt+Delete from a non-profit. And both, for me and Hans-Peter, lies very close to our heart. Yes, you build a business. You want to have a sustainable business from a business point of view, right? You need to make money. You need to make sure you can pay the salaries. But we also want to have impact, of course, with our product. I think for all of us, if you're working in this space of energy transition, fighting climate change, that link is made very easily. But I think for me, it's also important you build kind of a small family or a bigger family that you go about in a very sustainable way with your employees, work-life balance. Those people spend 40 hours of their time working for you, so it should be important that you have a very good environment to do so. And then B Corp, for those who are not familiar with B Corp, it's kind of an external label that you can apply for on a lot of sustainability metrics, both on external impact, making the world a better place, and internal processes. How do you deal with your employees? What is your own carbon footprint, and so on. So we did that mainly for positive impact reasons. But at the same time, I will not lie, our clients also are often B Corp, so there's definitely also a marketing aspect to it. But that's the minor part of it.
And do you help them getting the B Corp?
No, that's not something we do. That's
okay. Jonas, what's the strategy of Octave in growing the business? Are you using IP as part of the strategy, or is it the product? Is it the pricing? What would you say?
So yeah, if you say growing the company, then I mainly think about the sales and demand, right? Because in terms of IP, you see our customers, right, which are SMEs and they want to buy battery energy storage systems, and it needs to work well and needs to lower the electricity bill. They don't really care if we have IP about that or not, or that our design is patented, or they don't care about it. Mm-hmm. But for us, it was a strategy to go to investors and to funding, like say, okay, we have something here and it's technology, and it's we try to protect it so that not everybody can just look at it and copy it. So that's also strategy and also growth, right? But not really in market demand, but more in terms of funding, and you need everything, of course, to grow a company. But in terms of if you look at from the marketing perspective and sales perspective, I think we try to build a brand, right? And that's what's driving our I hope driving our customers to choose for us. Is that we are a brand and we are known for quality, and if you buy from us, you know we have a system that works very well and that will actually perform well, and that delivers what it's promised to do, And so yeah, we put quite some thought in that, and how can we do that, and we are present on fairs, and yeah, so there's some marketing behind it.
And as the B Corp is somehow focusing on sustainability,
Yeah.
you did start with sustainability as a core ingredient of your business as well.
Yeah. But we also thought about B Corp, but then to be honest, I didn't know about it, so it was Nico who brought it up, and but by the time we were really looking into it, there was already some negative fuzz about it as well, because you have some larger corporations which you could, I don't know, you could question if they're really so sustainable, and we thought, we're not gonna go through the effort again. Our customers are not really, they're not a big corporation, so they don't really care about it. It would be maybe nice for recruitment, so that's another part of growth. You need to hire the correct people, and also there you can brand yourself as a nice employer, or a very cool startup to work for, or whatever, right? So there is also, and there it could have been nice, but we decided not to go for the label. But
yeah, okay, Philippe, I have another question for you, because you also work together with your father. How is that going?
Well, yeah, it's a funny thing. Yeah, so to explain that a little bit, we are indeed two founders operationally working in the company, but my father is indeed helping a bit on the sales side, so he's doing hunting based on LinkedIn. And he makes first contacts with potential clients, and once they are interested in a meeting, then Damien springs in. So there is part of the solution. I'm not involved. So we try to keep those things separated a bit. We do talk about it at home, of course, now and then, but I'm not operationally involved in that process, and I like it that way, because sometimes, there are some things that, aren't too great, but then I can just figure it out with them. I support both of you, but you'll find a way. If you don't, let me know. So that works fine.
Okay, I got a signal that we have 5 minutes left, and to sort of wrap up the conversation, I'd like to ask all of you if you could give some key insights or learnings that you had so far that you want to share with the people listening here. Some important lessons you have learned, or maybe some tips, how, if they would start a business, or if they have to choose between thesis or entrepreneurship, which is the topic of today, how to do?
Yeah, it's hard where to get started. I think it was mentioned today that I think, Kenneth, if you haven't done something like this in the past, probably it's a sign that it's not really for you, unless perhaps if you're just not confident enough right now to get into it, and then starting a company is probably a big leap. So either then you try to get yourself surrounded with other people with perhaps more feeling or whatever, or otherwise start small. So you can still go to VTK or things like that, for instance, to grow some confidence. But it's something you have to be really passionate about. Is perhaps a big word, but you're really convinced that it is something you can do for the long haul, because you can't stop halfway. It's something that I have myself now as well. Sometimes it sucks. I worked really many hours last week with 2 very strong deadlines. And actually, tomorrow is the deadline, so I still have to work this evening and possibly this night as well. And sometimes you're like, but I can't stop, because then everything has been for nothing. But that same idea gives me hope, let's say, like, wow, we're building this great thing. And I think that's a bit the mindset you have to be in there, and then you find the energy to tackle all those problems that we discussed. And some people do it in some way, and some in a different way, and the result will be different. But I think the most important thing is that you actually go through it, and that you don't simply get stuck at some point and say, meh, let's stop now.
Okay, so go through it and have the right mindset. Jonas?
I would definitely also say that if you want to start your own business, be prepared, because it's a lot of hard work. It's not nice always. It's not fun. It sounds always very, I have a company and wow, but it's sometimes fun, but it's also a lot of times not fun, and it's a lot of work. deadlines, a lot of stress. So don't think it's very glamorous, because it's not. But I would also like to counter a bit what Philip says. I mean, I think I've seen quite some people that are like thinking about doing something, and they're like, okay, maybe a little bit, and then they start to be independent, but they start to be a bit consultancy. But I also think if you really want to do it, right? I mean, if you take that chance, right? You don't have so many opportunities in your life of starting something, right? Because in a couple of years' time, you might have a mortgage and a family, and then you have other things to worry about. So yeah, if you really want to do that, but know that it's hard work and it's not always fun, but then I would say just do it, right?
Yeah.
At a certain moment, yeah.
Nike. And yeah, I do agree. Sometimes people at young age really are eager to start something, but it can happen that you maybe are not, but maybe later come up to the point where you want to start something. Kenneth?
Very much in line with that. It's definitely not now or never. To your point, I would say jump when you feel 80% ready, because you will never be 100% ready. And if you're 100% ready, then you're definitely too late. But if you jump, go all in. And maybe then to add just with a personal story, or when I was in your shoes towards the end of my PhD, I did not feel ready to do a startup, right? I didn't feel the confidence that I had enough business experience. And also in a PhD, you're trained to be 100% certain, and only after 5 reviews, you can go to a conference or publish a paper. Starting your business is completely the opposite, right? I've been discussing selling something on paper that you're even not sure that you can build. It's a completely different world. So personally, I really needed those 2-3 years in business as a consultant to get enough, first of all, confidence, personal confidence, and also to undo, quote unquote, but that sounds bad, the mindset of it should be perfect before it goes out, right? So, but that was my personal assessment, and I didn't feel ready when I was in your shoes. I think if you want to do a startup, I think it's up to each one of you to make the assessment when and if you are ready to jump. But voilà, that was my personal evolution, let's say.
Yeah, I do agree again. And some things need to be unlearned again before stepping towards entrepreneurship. It's not for everyone. It's hard work. You need to have the right mindset that fits very well with the researchpreneurship mindset that we are organizing. So people who are interested in finding out if they have that, know that you can get into this program and find out, because the step from academia directly to entrepreneurship, it can be sometimes very quick. But I also have seen many cases where you can build confidence and train yourself a bit. And actually, sometimes you have been entrepreneurial in the past and maybe you forgot it. So bring back that memory. Helene, I don't know if there is a last question online, for example. Okay, so can you pick out one?
They are wondering about this fact that is often not discussed in entrepreneurship courses, and it's what are the level of expertise and the trust that these kind of companies have on the employees, especially at the initial phases.
Can you answer?
So should I repeat the question for
maybe?
people?
Yeah.
So the question is indeed, so on our website, the vacancies, we don't hire people straight from university. And I think it's a bit the point that Jonas mentioned. We are not big enough, we don't have enough structure to really learn people the basics of behavior in a professional context, right?
I can help in that.
Sorry?
I can help in that.
But really very basic stuff, right? How do you deal with clients, taking notes, debriefing? So that's why, to protect us and the person, we hire people who have at least 3, ideally 5 years of experience in another professional context. So it's equally as much because we are not ready for people straight from uni, than that we don't want those people.
Any one of you searching to hire someone, to hire PhDs or to hire master profiles? Because it's the moment now. Maybe.
Yeah, we're hiring business developers at the moment. No PhDs. But we're also mainly looking for people that have a little bit experience because, like Kenneth said, we don't have we cannot really support people straight out of university. That would not good for us, but also not good for them, and they won't get the necessary support that you would get. That being said, we have hired some younger people as well, with maybe 1-2 years of experience, and that has also turned out very well because often they're still, I think it's more important the eagerness and the mindset than the experience really that you have because, yeah.
Okay. Was there another last question or it's okay? Very good. Then we can wrap up the panel discussion, and I'd like to thank our speakers, Kenneth, Jonas, and Philippe, Carbon+Alt+Delete, Octave, and Builtwins. Thank you.